Welcome to the Quality Conversation brought to you by Resume Wallet. This show is all about discussing what quality means in the talent acquisition ecosystem. I'm your host, Serge Boudreau, and today I'm joined by my friend, Denise Chaffin, who is the CEO and head of talent attraction for Top Source Talent. Denise, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, Serge, it's always a pleasure to have conversations with you.
You know, I saw you, what is it now, 3 weeks ago at Transform. First of all, did you enjoy Transform? Is it a good conference?
I did. I like Transform. I like the fact that they put us in the middle of the expo hall instead of some little media room. You just like to be out amongst the people, So, yeah.
Do you like going to Las Vegas? Are you a Vegas
No,
lady?
no.
No?
We did go, though, while we were there and saw Postcard from Earth at the Sphere. So it was my first time in the Sphere. So that was cool. First of all, I've never been on so many long escalators in my life. That place is huge. And there's escalator after escalator to the top of it where we saw the performance. It was just amazing. It was
Fantastic. So everyone watching and listening this, if you're in Vegas, definitely go to the Sphere. But
go to the Sphere.
I know you well, but the audience might not. Do you want to give us a little bit of background of who Denise is and how you got into talent attraction?
Oh my gosh. I got into talent attraction in 1988. I was at a funeral. Did I tell you this story before?
No, please share.
Okay, so I was at a funeral, and the guy sitting next to me was my ex-brother-in-law, and he said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I said, "Hey, I'm working for the newspaper at the time doing commercial advertising." And he said, "Oh, okay, well, we should stay in touch." Okay, sounds good. Well, a few days later, he calls me and asked me if I'd be interested in getting into recruiting. And so he brought me in and introduced me to John McDonald, who to this day I am still friends and colleagues with. In fact, it surprises me that John's still doing it, but he said, "What else am I going to do? I don't play golf." Anyway, so I started recruiting back in 1988. So it's been a few minutes, and have worked both on the agency side, and also I have worked in-house for corporate companies. So I feel really blessed to have the experience of working both. In fact, there was a guy I worked for years ago. His name is Ian McKenzie. And Ian, wherever you are, I hope you're doing well. He was fabulous. I loved supporting him. And he was over talent at the time for Intel. And he made a comment to me one time. He said, "I think the best recruiters are people who started out in the agency business and then came in-house because of the sense of urgency that we have. Because when you work for a staffing firm or you're working for an executive search firm, whatever it is, you do develop a sense of urgency to get jobs filled because that's how you get paid, right?
I agree.
And then you go in-house and you carry that sense of urgency with you. And I guess it's notable from what Ian told me. So, yeah.
I agree completely with that, Denise. What I've seen in most organizations, or a lot of organizations, is the talent acquisition team is seen as an entry level to HR. So you have a lot of people that are in recruitment that actually want to be in the HR part of the business. So it's not something they're highly focused. They don't get that sense of urgency. They don't get that speed that someone coming in from staffing. So totally get it. So let's just say you've been in recruitment for a fairly long time and you've seen a lot of shifts in the industry. And what we're dealing with right now is a little bit unique. Probably not the first time it's happened, but a lot of companies are just seeing an onslaught of a lot of candidates. And unfortunately, a lot of candidates are unqualified. And I think there's many factors to it that are very well documented. One of them is just a rise of lazy apply tools that are applying to thousands of jobs, but there's also the easy apply from the Indeeds of the world that's just so easy by clicking once. In your experience, and as you're dealing with your clients and you're recruiting, how do you filter through just high volumes of candidates to find like what is that real talent that would be a fit for that role that you're recruiting for?
Honestly, when I'm speaking with the hiring managers prior to starting a search, I find out who their competitors are that they want to see candidates from.
Mm.
And so if I'm going to do a search using keywords versus putting in a title or any skills, I look first to see who we might have that's applied from the competitors. And I look
Okay.
there, or I might put in maybe one or two key skill words and the name of the competitors. And I do that because I honestly feel that people write poor resumes or they don't include what we need. So I would rather look at the candidates that are coming from the competitors and review those resumes myself to see if they might be a good fit for the role I'm working on. So that's my secret little trick.
Well, that's interesting too. It brings up something I've been thinking a lot about lately. So, when companies are recruiting or sourcing for talent, a lot of times hiring managers will tell them just basically go get someone who's doing exactly this job
Okay.
now and
Mhm.
recruit them to come over, which makes sense for a hiring manager, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for a candidate, right? Why
Right.
would I move over to potentially a competitor to do exactly the same job that I'm doing right now? We know money is a motivating factor, and that could be the case. If you're going to say, hey, I'm going to pay you 50% more, they might come over. But what is the story that you tell to be like, here are the opportunities at this company? I know it's the same role, but here's your career ladder, your projection, what you can do. Like, how do you manage that?
When you're interviewing the hiring manager, again, going back to that, I mean, they are the person who's going to be the decision maker on this, right? And if Mr. or Mrs. hiring manager out there doesn't know this, we need to understand what the value proposition is. That's one of the questions we need to ask them as the recruiter. What are we going to offer this person? Here's their resume. They have a great background, but look, they're working for a notable company doing the same role. What would be the value proposition to bringing them over to this company? I need to know that before I contact them.
Mm,
But Serge, I just had a conversation earlier about this. Sometimes it can be something as simple as your company is closer to where they live than the
yeah,
company they're working for.
good point.
Um, your company might offer them hybrid work schedule where they have to be on site all day, every day, and they're farther away. We don't know until we talk to a candidate. First of all, if you can get a candidate on the phone, there's some level of interest. Otherwise,
Yeah.
they just won't schedule in time with you, right? Because I mean, to your first question too, when you have a lot of resumes that you have to go through, I mean, we have AI now that can kind of parse resumes for us, but it's still going to be up to us, the human, to provide the insight and judgment on who might be a good fit. I just can remember for years back now when I would call candidates on the phone, because this was before the internet and you would have to, dial for dollars, right? So you get a candidate on the phone, and my first words to them were, hey, this is Denise Chaffin, or if I used a pseudonym, Lisa Bradley, whatever I was going by that day. And we can talk about that another time. But anyway, I would say to them, hey, this is Denise Chaffin with Top Source Talent. Do you have a minute? And if they said, let me shut my door, or can I call you back in 5? Or if they spoke to me in hushed tones, let me move to a conference room, I knew I had them. I just knew
Hmm.
they were going to be interested. Now, sometimes they weren't interested in the role, but anytime you get a candidate who's willing to talk to you, your foot's in the door, right? But you need to find out from them why they're going to talk to you, why
Yeah.
they're interested in talking to you. I've got this opportunity. I'd love to talk to you about it, but I'm just curious. You're interested in speaking to me. Are you on an active search? So that's where they start coming to you and giving you some of their story. And so your conversation becomes nothing more than a conversation. It's not really an interview, it's a conversation
Yeah.
between two people.
So when people apply now, so say they're applying for the
Right.
job, do you get candidates that don't respond to your calls or your emails? Like, are you
Yeah.
seeing some ghosting in that case?
Yes, we do get ghosting, a lot of ghosting, actually. I think that people oftentimes, if they are sending resumes like that, which is really unfortunate, and I think we're going to see more of this surge as we move forward, and this is going to be
Yeah.
something that we all have to like find a solution for, There are people who are maybe they're collecting unemployment and they have to put down how many jobs they've applied for.
Yeah, I
You know what I
forgot
mean?
about that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so if that's the case, they're going to ghost us because they're not
Mm.
really serious about looking for a job, right? Or maybe they have put their resumes out just to see who responds to them. We don't know why people are applying. That's the other thing. Maybe we should find out. Maybe that's something that we need to tap into. Why are people applying for jobs and then not responding, when they get the calls?
Well, let's just talk this through. I think
Okay.
the tools that are being leveraged, like I use the lazy apply tools that basically you enter your information, your resume, and the tool applies to 1,000 jobs a day, right? Like,
Right.
how do you know what you even apply? I know it gives you a report of what you've applied for, but if you're applying for that many job, a lot of them you're not actually really interested. You're just playing the numbers game.
Right.
So you're going to see ghosting there. You're
Mm-hmm.
going to see ghosting in a situation that they've applied for a lot of jobs, just maybe on their own. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe they get a callbacks from the ones that they were very interested in first, and then they just don't bother responding to you. And like fair to the candidate, like let's just put this in perspective, companies are ghosting candidates like crazy by never responding to them as well. So there's kind of that feeling in the ecosystem of, well, they're not responding to me when I apply, so I don't owe them a response when they reach out to me. I think there's that sentiment. Am I off base? Do you think that's happening?
No. Well, and quite truthfully, because we have all these tools now, and to your point, there are so many opportunities that come flying through. We have so much coming at us from so many different directions. And say, oh, that looks interesting. Oh, that looks interesting. But like to your point, are you really interested? Or are you just throwing it against the wall to see what sticks, as we used to say, right?
Well, and you hear the stories from candidates, or
Yeah.
I'm sure you have friends or family that have applied to thousands of jobs and not gotten a call back or a response. And I get it. That's not fun at all. It's a stressful process applying for a job. I think applying for a job is one of the toughest jobs out there. So
It
I
is.
get that, right? And we've made it easier throughout the years as far as like how to apply for jobs. And you think about when you started recruitment, like you had to go out and put an ad in the newspaper and spend a fair amount of money, right? So there was maybe 100 ads in the whole newspaper, or maybe 50, depending on the size of your city. You would get resumes by doing that, but it wasn't easy. As a candidate, you had to put effort, and similar for the employer,
You had
you
to
had to
go
put
in.
effort as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you'd have to go and drop your resume off or mail it in, like
I
in an
remember
envelope.
faxing
Yeah, or
resumes.
faxing. Yeah, or faxing resume.
But have you noticed, let's say in the last 4 to 5 years, have you noticed a shift in the candidates' expectation, what they're expecting from employers, how much they should get paid? What are you seeing in the marketplace?
Well, it's funny you say that because for as much as we hear about the ghosting now and experience it, candidates, what they want is they want transparency.
Yeah.
Right? And they want authenticity. I think that one of the things that candidates feel that they're missing from what I hear is authenticity from the companies they're working with or that they're interviewing with. Because at the end of the day, once they have interviewed, how quickly is the company getting back to them with feedback? I don't think it's about money as much now as people want a career path. There have been so many layoffs that people
Yeah.
have quite a bit of stage fright from that, in terms of going back to work for another company. Am I going to get myself all jazzed up again to go work for this company? And then maybe 6 months later, they lay me off. So I think people are feeling the burn from that still. People do want to know about their career path ahead. And I think that kind of gives them a little bit of confidence before they move forward with the company. If there is a conversation with HR or with the hiring team or whatnot, and it looks like this company is doing well and that there is a career path ahead for the candidate, then I think there's going to be a little more cohesion and a little more trust. We have to build trust now where we
That's
didn't
the key
before.
word, trust. And I think there is a lack of trust both from job seekers and job seekers to employers. I think it's
Right.
a huge issue right now. But I love what you talked about as far as just there's a little bit of hesitancy from job seekers willing to switch jobs right now because it feels like there's a lot of, I would say, uncertainty in the
Right,
marketplace, right?
right,
Like
right.
3 years ago, it was a great resignation. Everyone was quitting to find another job. And that environment has shifted dramatically, I would
Yeah.
say, especially in the last year. And then you look at everything going on in the economy, job seekers are staying still. In saying that, it kind of goes to what you were talking about earlier of, okay, what is your value proposition? Because chances are they're
And we
not
need
going to
one.
take a leap, right?
Yeah, we have to have one. And as the hiring manager or the executive, let's start with the executives. The CEO of the company, you need to make sure to tie that position to the business. I mean, we need to be more thoughtful about the positions we're hiring for. So there
Yeah.
aren't layoffs. How is this position going to impact the company bottom line and the
Yeah.
business? What is the roadmap for that position? I mean, instead of just hiring willy nilly and, oh, we need this person now, but oh, 6 months later, oh no, we hired for that position, but we really didn't need it. Here's what we needed instead. I mean, companies need to really be more thoughtful from the leadership team down on what their projections are for hiring. Workforce planning, it has to start there.
Oh,
And
I
then also
100%
too,
agree.
yeah, and how are we going to attract talent? What is our difference? I mean, when I was talking with Tim earlier, Tim Sackett, we were talking about, people don't necessarily just go from one company to another because, like, for example, ABC company in a particular small town may employ 3,000 workers and they think they're the hottest thing since sliced bread. But then you start asking other people around town and they don't agree. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So some companies I think are a little arrogant in thinking that they're hot stuff. When look at your Glassdoor ratings, are you really hot stuff? If you are, what does Glassdoor say about you, right? I mean, and what is the feedback? Because people don't mind sharing feedback. Look at Reddit. Some of the comments you get on Reddit. Of course, I don't know that they really specifically name out companies, but
Oh, I've
just
seen it. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. Especially the bigger brands, they will name names, right?
yeah,
And I think the other one is TikTok. Like go on
oh,
TikTok and you will find a lot of quit TikTok, right? Where they're
yeah,
talking about the company they worked at, what the situation was, and they're naming names. As I think our generations were a little bit hesitant on naming names and being really out there and calling out companies, but I don't think this generation cares. I think they're going full out and naming names.
yeah. Now, when you say generation, which generation are you referring to? Because we've got
Well,
five.
a Generation X and the boomer generation, obviously millennials are becoming the leaders and they're taking over a lot of the management type spot. But Gen Z coming in has a completely different approach, like even different than millennials, I find. Like
I think.
they're definitely
Mhm.
social media first. They're not really going on Glassdoor from what I can see. And they're going straight to
To
Reddit or they're
TikTok.
going straight to
To
TikTok.
TikTok.
So we
Yeah.
talked a lot about technology, about AI, automation, and we all know it's got a growing role in recruitment. But you're a recruiter by trade, at heart. How do you maintain that human centered approach? Because the biggest thing is you want to ensure quality for your candidates, but also the employer that ends up hiring someone. So, how do you take a human approach to all of this?
Again, this is a human business we're in. And I think that the technology is great. I've always been pro technology. And again, I came from a period of time where we didn't have technology, right?
Yeah.
And I've heard, the whining and the worry over the years about different plateaus that we've hit with technology. I remember Y2K. I remember people running to the store buying water and toilet paper. I don't know why people had this fixation with toilet paper, but anyway, it was the big fear that something was going to happen with Y2K and nothing happens, right? And then there
Yeah.
was a dot-com bust and everybody's like, ah. And then we had 9/11 and we had the 2008 real estate bust. I mean, there's just been so many things that have happened over the years that have made people raise red flags. But all along, technology has continued, right? And we continue to use technology. And no matter what is going on in our environment or in our society, technology still clicks along.
Yeah.
And honestly, I love it because when we first started using the internet years ago and job boards came in, our jobs became very transactional. When I started recruiting, I was more of a talent consultant or
Yep.
a staffing consultant. We had more one-on-one meetings with people, face-to-face interactions. We weren't doing video conferencing yet, so it was either by phone or in person, right? And we did a lot more traveling, tons of traveling. And we did do conferences, and I think conferences coming back are huge.
Yeah.
So that's one piece right there. Meet people where they are. I had
Yeah.
one person at one of the conferences I attended last year referred to the conferences now as the new water cooler. So she said, "Yeah, I invite my clients, I invite my vendors, and I invite people I want to see at the conference so we can all get together." So just that one-on-one, that human interaction, we're the glue that's still going to hold everything together. But the AI, I love it. I mean, I
Yeah.
am best friends with Chat GPT. It's making my workday so much more efficient. And I'm somebody who's been in this business a long time. I think that the technology is fabulous, but at the same time, it's a tool, right?
Yeah.
And quite truthfully, you've got AI as your tool, but you've got the humans who build trust and build relationships. And this is a relationship oriented business. No matter what happens with technology, we still need connections with each other. We still need the human interaction and the human judgment. So AI is a tool, humans are the decision makers. It's
Yeah.
two completely different roles. And it will always be that way, in my opinion.
I agree completely. I think technology will always evolve. There's a couple of things that we have to be very conscious of. It's as recruiters, we can't leverage AI completely for all our reach outs, for all our communication,
Right.
because our candidates are going to become numb to it. And the example that I use is like, look at your emails now. Like, if you open up your emails, I'm sure that you're not looking at 90% of your emails because they're AI generated marketing messages that is just, we've become
Delete,
numb to it.
delete,
Exactly.
delete, delete.
So, how do you leverage those tools, but also keep the human in it so candidates feel that connection with you? And it's very clear when it's AI. I know it's going to get better, but it's also a concern that it's going to get too good, right? And you won't be able to tell the difference. And then everything is
I
just
don't
like a
believe that
blur.
though. I don't
No,
believe that. Do you, Serge? I mean, we are intuitive beings. I think we will always know the difference between something that is automated and something that is real.
I wish I had an answer and I would say no, but as we just said, it's evolving so quickly that it's going to get harder to differentiate that, right? And I was talking to someone last couple of days and it's like their number one tool in recruitment is the phone. They just cold call candidates. And I'm like, that's a differentiator because I can tell you most recruiters don't do that anymore. And
But we need
for
to.
candidates, yeah, they're not used to it too,
Right.
but most of the time candidates will answer the phone that in the past maybe they didn't. So I guess we will see.
I think we'll
Yeah.
go back to that. I think we'll go back to more telephone contact with candidates. I read something really interesting that ChatGPT put out there, so I have to give ChatGPT credit.
Okay.
If AI is the engine, human connection is the steering wheel. You like that one?
I do love it. I do like that. I'm going to use that. That's going to be the title of this episode, I think, now. So,
Okay. I really liked it too because I thought that makes so much sense. Like I've already had two robocalls, and the way it happened was I answered the phone. First of all, I thought it was somebody I knew. I answered the
okay.
phone, and it's this voice that came on and said, "Is this Denise?" And I said, "Yes," even though I answered the phone and said, "This is Denise." So this person says, "Is this Denise?" And I said, "Yes." And so I thought, "Oh, what's going on here?" And I said, "Can you hear me?" "Oh, yes, this is great. This is Andrea, and I'm calling from such and such. And do you have a few minutes while I ask you some questions? I've got this opportunity to share with you." But there was something about the way she said it. And so I said, "Who are you really? What's your last name?" "Andrea." And there was like this, oh, is this Denise? And it started almost like all over again, like it had a
Oh, the
short circuit in it. You know what I mean? So I just hung up. It happened twice. Same
oh,
kind of thing. And I thought,
interesting.
okay, whoever's using the robocall, to contact candidates for these stuff, and you got a little ways to go.
Oh
Get a
yeah.
human on the phone. I think it's going to
Oh,
hurt. I think that's going to hurt companies doing that, honestly.
I think it will too, but I used to think that humans had to be 100% part of every process. Like one of them is jobs, like getting hired or whatever the case. If a human's not involved, it's not going to work out. I've changed my mind a little bit on that because I've seen the use case of why it makes sense. And what I mean is like high volume entry level
Oh,
roles
sure,
that
sure.
eventually they're getting to a human to do the final interview, but I don't think anyone cares if they get hired, right? Like how they got hired. If they get hired, they're going to be happy. So even if humans weren't really involved until the last step, if I can do all of that automatically, great. Let's get back into recruitment. And obviously, we have seen a lot of shift in the industry. But I'm really curious. Like, I think we all want quality across the board. We want to hire quality people. We want qualified candidates. How do you measure quality when you're dealing with your clients? As far as, do you go back 6 months after if they're still there and being successful? That's quality. Like, how do you look at quality with your clients?
I think the candidate experience is a good measure of quality. To
Yeah,
your point, you can look at performance and how well the person's doing 30, 60, 90, 100 days, whatever it is after that person has started. But
yeah,
then going back, and I think this is becoming more popular now, I'm hearing about it more often, are candidate surveys, right? Or pulse surveys.
yeah.
And I love Matt Reek's book called The Employee Retention Bible. It's a good book. And it talks about how to treat your employees from day one. So let's say you hire somebody and most of their calls were automated, before they got hired. And they did have one or two in-person meetings with humans before they get hired. But at what point are you going to ask them about their hiring experience so that you know whether or not that process that you hired them through is really working? So I think an immediate survey is important. Another one maybe 30 days down the road, or 60 days later, then another one maybe 9 months or a year later, right? So when you have that candidate feedback, that is to me the most important quality measurement. I'll tell you if it's a good company, not the boss that hired me. I can tell you how good of a company it is. So I just really think that the candidate will be the qualifier.
Yes, but
Right.
obviously their experience is going to be, but they might think they're great, but the company doesn't. Like,
Yeah, that's true too. Well, that's just it though. You have to get their input, but then you also have the performance measurements, right? So between the performance measurements from the hiring team and HR, and then the candidate surveys that come in, I think that that's a great way to measure quality.
well, there's a couple things. The quality of hire has always been very hard to measure because even if like a lot of companies look at, okay, you've been here a year, you were a good quality hire. Is that the truth? And I think that's stretching it, in my opinion, because we see a lot of people stay at company and companies keep people even though they're not performing very well for whatever reason. The godfather of recruitment, marketing, or talent acquisition, Lou Adler, has a book about this, right? And his whole thing is you hire for the 1 year anniversary. So you're always looking at 1 year from now, is that person been successful? And when you get to that 1 year, you're asking the candidate, was this the right move for you? And
Right.
you're asking the
Right.
hiring manager, was this the right move for you? The hiring manager said, no, actually, I wouldn't do this again. I wouldn't hire him again. Wasn't a good quality hire. And I think it's the same for the candidates, but it's really hard to get that feedback from that candidate, right? Because they wouldn't want to say, no, I would never take this job again, because obviously if that went back to the company. But I am looking at surveys as one, like as you said, pulse surveys. When I was leading a talent acquisition team, one of the things that we did was net promoter scores at 90 days, basically asking that to the hiring manager. If you had to do this again, would you do it? And similar to the candidate, it was confidential. And then it gave me kind of a net promoter score when I aggregated all the data. And that worked for us. But it's still very subjective.
It
It's
is.
still very hard to define what quality means. And it's very hard to define what a quality candidate is, right? Because they might have all the certification, they might have all the skills that are needed to be successful, but they might not have the EQ. They might not like it, right? And not put their full effort. So a good quality candidate will always be hard to measure, but that's what we're trying to solve here.
Exactly. Well, and on the quality side of it, I think too that when we are hiring people, we have to not just look at them for the position we're hiring them for, but we always have to have the plan B.
Yeah.
What if they're a really great person and they just don't latch onto that particular role? Or maybe they just don't connect with that hiring manager as well as they were hoping to. But doesn't mean that they're not a good hire. So I like what you're saying. It's really hard to measure this because would you keep this person on your staff and put them into a different position? If so, what's that position going to be? Now, one of the questions when I am doing reference checks for candidates, one of my final questions is, well, first of all, is this person hireable, rehireable by your
Yeah.
company? And if so, or even if you were working for a different company, what position would you hire this person for? And it's
Interesting.
amazing the feedback you get from the references because they may or may not tell you that they would hire the person for the position that they're interviewing for. They might say, well, yeah, he probably might be good for that position you're interviewing for, but I would hire him for XYZ position because I like his skills in this other area. So it is subjective, right?
It is 100%. I love that question, by the way. Denise, I've got one last question. Obviously, there's been a lot of change, a lot of movement in this industry. Looking for jobs and hiring has become extremely difficult. There's been a lot of tools in place. There's a lot of changes happening overall. But what do you see in the next 5 years? Like, what's going to happen in our ecosystem? And what can we do to start driving better quality across the board, better opportunities for our job seekers, but higher quality for companies that we work for?
One article I read recently was we need to remove the words high volume
Okay.
and quit treating our hires like high volume, like it's a cattle call. You know, each person that we hired is a unique individual and they're hired for a unique role, even if you need several of them for a particular business. And I think that that's one of the things that automation and the transactional recruiting that we've been doing over the last several years, it's kind of a bad position it's put us in. It took us out of the role of being human. And I do love what AI has done to help us. I think it's augmenting our roles as recruiters. I think it's really helping us a lot, but it's not going to replace us. And I still believe that we have to treat people like people. And I do like the point that you brought up about, okay, so if it is working, automation is working to hire people, that's great, but we still are a people oriented society and we still
Yeah.
have to have people interaction. We still need to treat people like people. So there's some things I think that we need to change along the way. I don't know where and when the term high volume came into existence. I know it's been a hot term for a long time and there's a lot of companies who will only hire certain people because of their high volume experience. One time I saw that, I thought, is that really where we're at right now? I mean, what? So I think what's going to happen, Serge, when I look at my crystal ball, is
Yeah.
I think that we're going to automate and we're going to enjoy the automation and what it does for us, but it's going to put us back where we were 30 years ago into roles that made us come into this business to begin with. You know, I
Interesting.
mean, I love what Tim Sackett said today. He goes, it's not like any of us wake up at the age of 10 years old or 18 and go, oh, I think I want to become a recruiter for my career. You know, most of us fall into this business, right? It's
We
not,
all do.
yeah, it's not like we go seeking out at a young age to be recruiters, right? But what brought us into the business is the human factor. is the connection with other people. It's almost like salespeople. We are salespeople. These are kind of sales-oriented positions, almost like real estate agents, right? We like being with people. And I think that the people that we bring into organizations feel the same way. You know, they like that connection. And so I think we're going to go back there. I think we're going into reverse, but smarter. But there are some things that we need to lose, and that's the transactional part of our job. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to miss that.
No.
As much as they got hooked on job boards and whatnot, I think that people will start to really enjoy the role as a talent consultant, talent advisor. The only problem I see with this right now, though, is Gen Z, because they are growing up digital. So now we have to take people who are digitally oriented and put them into roles that are human oriented, you know, that are more relationship building, personal, one-on-one type of, you know.
They're going to struggle. I can tell you that. That's going to be a
So
major
our
struggle.
job then is going to be to help them to learn how to have relationships. There you go. Because they're going to need us. I'm sorry, Gen Z, you will need us.
I agree. I agree. Let's close off on some rapid fire questions, Denise.
Oh, yeah.
Right? The first one, you already mentioned a book. So what book has changed your perspective on business or HR?
On business recently has been the book, The Algorithm by Hilke
Oh,
Schellman.
yes.
When I read that book, I also ordered a copy on audiobook and listened to it as well. I mean, that is an amazing book. I mean, if we want to talk about where we're heading with technology, the woman has just done an amazing job with her research on that book.
I think I recommended The Algorithm to you because
You
I
did.
had
You did.
I did have Hilke on the podcast, read the book, thought it was fascinating. I agree. The Algorithm, for anyone in the industry, for talent acquisition, HR tech, you should be reading that book because it's kind of scary, but
It's very scary.
yeah.
It is a very scary book because that book takes us into the future as well as the present.
It
Things that
does.
we didn't know about the present, but it's also leaping us forward in the future. And I did interview her as well. And
Oh, did
so,
you?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, she's
Mhm.
fantastic. So, Denise, usually I end the show with like a one-liner or something, but you already said it. I just want you to repeat what that line
Oh,
was.
yes. Okay. The perfect one is, if AI is the engine, human connection is the steering wheel.
That's the name of the episode. So, Denise, where can people find you? What's the easiest way to get a hold of you?
Uh, LinkedIn. I'm all over LinkedIn. My website is for my company is topsourcetalentllc.com. And so those are probably the two best ways to reach me.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining me, Denise.
Oh,
This is
Serge, thank
always a
you so
pleasure.
much. Always, always. I always enjoy our conversations. Thank you.
And for the audience, thank you for listening. Please go check out our YouTube channel. We're also available on every major podcast player. Denise, fantastic day.
Thank
Thank you.
you, Serge. Thank you.